Hello Misfits and welcome. In today's video, we are talking about the pros and cons to playing D&D online. Now, some of you might know this, but some of you might not. That is pretty much the only way I play the game these days. I started in person like a lot of people do, but as lives change, as me and my friends grew up and were seeking jobs that were going to take us to different cities or getting ready for grad school, it seemed pretty evident that we were not going to stay in the same town and be able to play in person. So I took it upon myself to figure out how we could keep the group together despite not being in the same city. And that's how I stumbled upon Roll20 and kind of got into this world of playing D&D online. What's crazy is this was all happening before the pandemic, before the plague, took the world by storm. My group actually started playing online in 2019. Now it's been, 5 years of us playing online and me DMing an online game, and I've learned quite a bit about the process, and I've watched how things have changed, and some for the better and some for the worse, as more and more people discovered this method of playing the game. And even though I sometimes feel like I do know what I'm doing, I am still learning new things every single day. But I wanted to talk with you guys about what I consider to be the major pros and cons of playing online. Some people might think that it is completely inferior in every way, and I don't necessarily think that that is true. There are definitely some pros to playing online. So let's get into this list. Let's talk about that. Before we get any further, I do want to talk to you guys about Sci-Fire. So Sci-Fire is the sister company of Books Please, and it is dedicated to offering people an extensive collection of books from a variety of genres. They sell manga, fantasy, science fiction, gaming books, and much, much more. They've graciously asked me to be an affiliate, meaning that if you use the code Misfit at checkout, you can get 5% off your purchase. On top of this discount, Sci-Fire is already trying to get you fantastic deals on books. Nearly every single book on their website is going to be listed at a lower price than what you might find somewhere else. After looking through their catalog, I have decided to treat myself to the Call of Cthulhu Keeper Handbook by Sandy Peterson, but I am also eyeing the Delicious in Dungeon manga series. I started watching that show on Netflix, and it perfectly captures that, quirky chaos that is D&D, and I saw that they have the first volume for pretty cheap on this website, so I think I'm gonna snag that one as well. There are tons of different TTRPG books on Sci-Fire, from Dungeons & Dragons to Pathfinder to Starfinder to Call of Cthulhu and much more. So be sure to go look through their website and don't forget to use the code Misfit at checkout. Alright, so let's start out with a nice pro before we get into some of the undesirable aspects of online play. So a major pro to playing TTRPGs online is that you aren't limited to finding people in your area. So one of the hardest things about getting a group together is just the act of getting a group together. But with the way online games have evolved, it's super easy to just pop into a forum or a Discord or a Facebook group or just Roll20's website and just find a game that you can join. It's so easy, and you are not limited to having to find people in your area. You could be playing with people down the street or on the other side of the world, and that is truly remarkable. But a major con to playing D&D online is that you are at the mercy of the other player's equipment. Bad microphones, crappy internet, cheap cameras, you name it. All it takes is one of these things to go wrong for the session to kind of feel a little bit ruined, and for you to lose that player for that session, or even longer depending on what the situation is. From a DM's perspective, this sucks. I can't count the number of times somebody's internet crapped out and we lost that player. And sometimes it happens at an okay time when their character's not really in the middle of roleplay, and sometimes It happens at an incredibly crucial time, and it just flat out sucks. This is especially difficult when you're trying to, record your games and put them up on your own YouTube channel. So, this is the worst thing. And you don't really have control over the other player's equipment, If somebody comes in and they have really bad audio, you can't just be like, go buy a nice mic. Like, that doesn't really work out. And, sometimes people have massive internet outages and you have no control over that. And sometimes it means, having to pause the game for a while. Sometimes it means losing a player for the rest of the session. It sucks. And there's really no, fix to this. And this is just something you're gonna have to work around. I guess all things considered, if we're comparing this to in-person play, it's not that different from somebody having an emergency and having to leave, or, a last minute thing pops up and they can't come to the game. I guess it could be kind of similar to that, but it's just not fun. It just kind of sucks every single time. Major pro to playing online is no commuting or lugging around maps and minis. For the most part, you're probably just at home, like I am right now. You're just sitting at your own desk, and so if you've been playing for hours and hours and hours and it's late into the night and you log off, you're probably just mere steps away from your own bed, and you don't have to get in a car and drive halfway across town and go home. And you don't have to, roll up the battle map and put all your minis in a box and put all your dice away and lug all of that. You're just home. And you don't have to do any of that stuff. And that's pretty nice. Honestly, when ye old plague kind of put a pause on the world, that was kind of the nice thing, I guess, about online classes, because I was in grad school through the majority of the really bad part of the pandemic, and you can just sort of roll out of bed and just make sure that you look presentable from the waist up, and nobody's going to be the wiser, and the second class is over, you can roll back into bed. It was kind of nice, and I know people that did work like that as well. I mean, I was giving voice lessons and I was kind of doing the same thing. So not having to commute, always a perk in my opinion. So this is a mix of a pro and a con. I want to talk about crosstalk and, being able to mute yourself and that sort of aspect of online play. I think most of us remember when we were adjusting to pandemic life and a life of online meetings and online classes and all sorts of things like that, talking over each other online sucks. It makes it impossible to focus on anything, and it's basically, you just can't do it. It happens a lot in D&D. It's like when two people over here are having a conversation while the DM is having a conversation with somebody else, and there's multiple things happening at the same time. That does not work online. You have to mute yourself when you are not in the spotlight and having your roleplay moment, pretty much. Otherwise, it's incredibly distracting and horrible and hard to focus. So crosstalk basically just gets eliminated in online play. Everybody learns pretty quickly that they need to mute when they aren't talking, and that's great. It's fantastic. It's way easier to be a more courteous player and allow different people to take the spotlight and know when to step up and be that person and when to bow out. I feel like my table especially have become just so polite and gracious to each other because they've had to adapt to this style of play. And crosstalk does kind of continue to exist in online games, but it can exist in the form of talking in a chat. They can have their side conversations in chat and not distract the people that are sort of acting in the scene, so to speak. So that's also a nice thing about this online play. However, when everybody is muted and you're the DM and you tell a funny joke or throw in a massive twist and drop some crazy bomb in terms of story and plot, and everybody's muted, it's just dead silence and it's crickets and it kind of sucks. It feels like you're doing stand-up and you told a joke and it didn't land, you know? And I hate it. It feels like you're unable to engage with your audience. And that is like one of my least favorite things about these online games, because there is like sort of like a wall or a barrier that you're having to like fight through in order to reach your audience, because they're scattered across the city, the country, the world, who knows? So that can be really, really difficult to deal with. And it's made me like have to really focus on watching people's faces, engage their reaction that way, as opposed to listening for it. So yeah, that's been difficult for me. And I think that just shows that there is just something so magical about being in person with people. You're really able to connect in ways that you just can't when you're separated physically. You know what I mean? Okay, major pro, and this is so huge. The various online apps and digital materials that are at your disposal when you play online are incredible, and they are extremely immersive. You can have beautiful digital maps that are for very cheap or free. 2 Minute Tabletop has a bunch of different maps and assets and tokens that are free. You can also just pop on a Patreon and support an artist for like a couple of bucks and have access to an extensive library of beautiful maps. And that's fantastic. That already, when you drop that in front of your players, they see where they are. They feel like they're in that space. Also, these different online programs you can use to run these games, like Foundry or Roll20, have all these different sort of like effects and things at your disposal. Lighting effects, music and sound effects. Some of them have like weather effects that you can add in. And all of that is extremely immersive and makes it really hard to not feel like you're there in that scene. And that can be difficult to achieve in an in-person game. The really beautiful terrain pieces and tokens that we often associate with these D&D games, like Dwarven Forge stuff, is expensive. Most people don't have the budget for that. I'll see Critical Role getting kind of like slammed for having all these fancy, expensive maps and stuff, and they're like, that's not realistic. And it's like, well, yeah, no. Most of us are probably rolling out the dry eraser gridded mat and drawing questionable drawings to draw out our map, and that's the best we can do. And sometimes we have tokens for our characters, and sometimes we're using dice or gummy bears or, you know, the random game pieces from the various board games you've got lying around. Yeah, it's not necessarily the most immersive thing in the world. It's way easier to kind of have all these high quality bells and whistles to add to your game when it's just online, because you can get a lot of that for much cheaper, whereas like getting these physical things, it's going to be more expensive. By far the biggest con to online play is just not physically being with your friends. There are just certain things that come with being together with your D&D group that you just can't repeat when you're online. I was talking to my players about this today and sort of asking them about the pros and cons that they felt were associated with online games. And most of us mentioned missing like snacking with each other. We used to always get Oreos and Goldfish, and we would sit and like munch on all of that while playing these games. Yeah, I miss that. That's really, it's like annoying and frustrated to not have that anymore. Also, you know, my players are spread across 4 different time zones, and that can really limit how long we can play. We pretty much have to be done by like 10:30 p.m. because I've got people that are in different time zones, and for them it's later than that, and they need to go to bed because they've got work the next morning. So that can be difficult to work around. It sort of limits how long you can play. You know, little things like somebody's about to cast like a really big, powerful spell, and they need a bunch of dice, and they don't personally have enough dice, and so everybody around the table hands them all of their like D4s so that they can cast this like 8th level fireball and roll all the damage. You know, you don't get that when you're playing online, which is kind of sad. And even things almost unrelated to D&D. But I remember my group, you know, every once in a while we'd have some people that had to cancel last minute, or we needed more time to prep for the next session. And so we would just sort of hard pivot to something else, like, you know, playing Super Smash Brothers or Mario Party, or like pulling out a board game or something. And that's not really easy to do with online games unless you've prepped all of that ahead of time. So it's a little harder to like fast pivot to like some sort of last minute other thing. Things like that. There's just that sort of like, I don't know, that sort of personable kind of quality that you lack in a lot of ways with online games. And you can get really, really close. You really can, but there's always going to be just a little bit of something missing. And that's why I try to get my group together every summer so that we can be together in person and sort of relive some of those moments and stuff. And it's not easy to do. We've yet to all be in the same room at the same time. But even though I miss that personable nature, and even though online games do not compare, if it weren't for online D&D play, if it weren't for this ability to play online, I wouldn't get to play at all, which is crazy. I think for most of my group, if we didn't have D&D, if we didn't have the ability to play it online, we would have really struggled to make it through the pandemic. That was sort of our lifeline for quite a while there. There were times when we were playing twice a week, every single week, and it was like the thing to look forward to in such a tough time for a lot of us. So, though in a few ways it is inferior, it's so wonderful that we even have the option to begin with. Anyway, I hope you found this video entertaining. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe. That always helps me out. But more importantly, leave a comment down below. Do you play games online? Do you play in person? Is it a mix of both? Do you only do one and not the other? Did you stumble into online play? Talk to me in the comments. Let me know. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I'd love to hear from you guys. But with all of that said and done, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and I will see you again next time. Speaking about, getting into Roll20 and playing D&D online before it was cool, boy did I notice when everybody else discovered Roll20. Because I remember, 2019, playing on Roll20, perfectly fine, never had an issue logging in, getting all my players in, never had an issue with cameras or anything like that. And then we get into the plague, the literal plague, and everybody is stumbling into learning about Roll20 and learning about these various ways to play online. And suddenly it sucked. Suddenly it was the worst thing in the world, and it took forever to get everybody on. I remember vividly that you never wanted to be the last person to join the game, because it meant that something wasn't going to work. So people would try to get early, would try to log in early so that they wouldn't be the last person, which is hilarious. And the very last person, they would come in and they wouldn't see and hear everybody. And so they'd have to hit refresh, or we'd have to hit refresh. It was like this constant game of all right, we'll just keep hitting refresh until we see everybody. And eventually it would work. But sometimes it would take ages for us to all be able to see and talk to each other. Absolute ages. There was one time where I think we were waiting I think it was over an hour to like get in and be able to work. And I think we figured out that maybe there was some sort of update lingering in the background that was bogging things down and messing everything up. But man, I will say though, Roll20 specifically has been working very hard to improve their servers and improve the quality of their website, and it is noticed, and I very greatly appreciate it. Although, I used to use their video chat function, but they released some sort of update like half a year ago, and it just stopped working for me and all of my players completely. And I tried to figure out what was going on, but we just sort of switched over to something else for that. But, ooh, man, boy, were they not ready for, like, probably everybody in the country and possibly the world, like, trying to figure out how to use their website all at the same time. Ooh, I do not miss those days at all. Any of y'all have any experiences similar to that? Because, if you do, I'm very sorry, and I understand your pain. Have a good day.